and now the senator from Missouri, so we'll go to Senator Kennedy.
Let me start over. My mic was off. Thank you all for being here. I listened to all of you with great interest. Professor, do you believe that people respond to incentives?
Thank you, Senator. I do believe that people respond to incentives.
Do you believe that what you allow is what will continue?
I suppose I do.
Okay. I listened to all of you talk about enhancing affirmative disclosure requirements, strengthening the presumption of disclosure. I listened to you talk about consultants. I listened to you talking about the need for a public interest balancing test. But those can be ignored just as easily as every other part of the statute. Why don't you just create personal liability for the person responsible for turning over the documents?
Certainly, Senator. There are systems, other jurisdictions around the world that do have, in fact, personal penalties for government officials.
Do you recommend it for us?
I don't think that we're at the point where we necessarily have to take such a step in order to drastically change the incentives that agencies.
Why not? I mean, all administrations stall and restall in turning over documents to the American people, don't they? Does anybody disagree with that? It's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. It's an executive branch thing, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I do not disagree with that. It is.
So why don't we hold the people responsible, personally responsible? I'm not saying not afford them due process. You may want to require bad faith with a reasonable, not an impossible definition of bad faith. I mean, if you want to solve this problem, why don't you just create personal liability, Mr. Howell?
I think that's a terrific idea. Right now, the mechanism to have liability is basically an attorney's fees, and those are rarely given out. So the government really is never forced to pony up.
Well, the employees don't care if the government gets hit with attorney's fees, do they?
Correct. And that's why the Department of Justice is willing to tolerate us suing them 100 times, because we all pay for their lawyers.
Look, we can.
In a political climate where both parties dodge responsibility, one senator isn't afraid to demand answers. Today, Senator John Kennedy confronts the growing culture of secrecy in Washington and drops a bombshell solution that could change everything. The Freedom of Information Act, a pillar of transparency meant to ensure that the American people have access to government records. But decades later, both Republican and Democratic administrations have found ways to stonewall, delay, and ignore requests. The result? A bureaucratic black hole where truth goes to die. At the heart of this crisis, zero personal accountability. Government employees face no real consequences for ignoring the law. Senator Kennedy isn't just asking questions, he's making a case that the only way to fix the system is to fix the incentives. And that starts by making those in power personally responsible for their inaction. Kennedy: instead of rewriting rules they'll just ignore, why don't we hold people responsible? Legal experts try to offer measured responses, citing international precedent and current FOIA statute language. But Kennedy isn't having it. Expert witness. I don't think we're at the point where we necessarily have to take such a step. Kennedy, even the legal community begins to shift. One witness calls Kennedy's idea terrific. Another admits that current penalties are toothless. Kennedy makes it clear this isn't about party lines, it's about a deep-rooted executive branch habit that spans generations. Kennedy, it's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing, it's an executive branch thing.
If the government gets hit with attorney's fees, do they?
Correct. And that's why the Department of Justice is willing to tolerate us suing them 100 times, because we all pay for their lawyers.
Look, we can write and rewrite statutes all we want to. But it is clear that people in the government are not responding to Freedom of Information Act requests in bad faith. Sometimes they need more time, but I'm talking about in bad faith. That's clear. And it happens on both sides. So instead of just rewriting new laws and new rules that they're going to ignore, why don't you just hold people personally responsible? What about it, Doctor?
I actually fully agree, and I would point out that there's a mechanism in the FOIA statute currently where if it turns out that there's evidence of an agency or an agency employee intentionally withholding documents without a reasonable basis, a judge could, in issuing that order, make that finding.
And when's the last time that happened?
Almost never.
Yeah, it hasn't happened in the history of ever, has it?
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
And
that's
until Congress makes it very clear that we're serious about this, we're going to be equal
Kennedy's idea terrific. Another admits that current penalties are toothless. Kennedy makes it clear this isn't about party lines, it's about a deep-rooted executive branch habit that spans generations. Kennedy, it's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing, it's an executive branch thing. Senator Kennedy's fiery call for accountability may be the wake-up call Washington needs, but will Congress have the courage to act? In this eye-opening Senate hearing, Senator John Kennedy takes a bold stand on government transparency, calling out both Democratic and Republican administrations for their failure to honor Freedom of Information Act obligations. With sharp questions and unwavering logic, Kennedy confronts legal experts and government watchdogs on the real reason behind withheld documents: lack of personal accountability. Should government officials be personally liable for obstructing FOIA requests? This video breaks down the powerful exchange and what it could mean for transparency in the U.S. government. Subscribe for more political analysis, hearing breakdowns, and uncensored truth from Capitol Hill. Like and share if you believe in government accountability. Sound off in the comments. Should officials face personal consequences for stonewalling the public?